The envelope was already open when Adrian Moretti saw Imani Brooks's handwriting beneath the broken red seal. His hand stopped halfway across the mahogany desk. The study was silent except for the faint tick of the brass clock near the fireplace and the low hum of the city 40 floors below. Amber light from a shaded lamp spread across the cream-colored paper, catching the rough fibers along its yellowed edge. Adrian had spent 20 years learning not to hesitate. Men waited for his decisions. Lawyers washed his face before they spoke. Entire rooms changed temperature when he entered them. But now his thumb rested against one familiar curve of ink, and he did not move. Where did this come from? His voice was quiet. The man standing near the door shifted his shoes against the polished walnut floor. It was found behind an old cabinet in the downstairs correspondence room, Mr. Moretti. Renovation crew pulled it out this morning. Adrian looked again at the envelope. His name had been written by hand. Adrian Moretti. No title, no formal address. Imani had always written his name that way on grocery lists, delivery notes, little reminders left beside his untouched coffee. 5 years ago, she had vanished from his house without saying goodbye. Her staff room had been empty by sunrise. Her uniforms were gone. The small blue mug she used every morning had disappeared from the kitchen shelf. By noon, Adrian had been told she had taken money and left New York. He had never heard her voice again. Now the paper beneath his fingers smelled faintly of dust and cedar, as though the house itself had kept it hidden. He turned the envelope over. A postal stamp sat near the corner. Adrian leaned closer. The date made the muscles in his jaw tighten. 5 years earlier. 3 days before Imani disappeared. Leave. The door closed softly behind him. Adrian remained standing. He slid one finger beneath the folded pages and pulled them free. The paper crackled in the still room. Her handwriting filled the first page in dark blue ink, neat at the beginning, less steady toward the bottom. He recognized the pressure marks where her pen had paused. He could almost see her at the little desk in the servant's wing, shoulders bent beneath the weak lamp, choosing each word while the mansion slept. Adrian read the first line. Adrian, there is something I never had the courage to tell you. His eyes stopped. The clock ticked once, twice. Somewhere beyond the glass, a horn sounded far below on Fifth Avenue, thin and distant. He read the sentence again, slower this time. Something she had never told him. Not something she had forgotten. Not something she had meant to explain later. Something she had carried deliberately while living beneath his roof, pouring his coffee, folding his shirts, passing him in hallways without ever letting the truth cross her lips. Adrian lowered himself into the leather chair. The material gave a quiet creak beneath his weight. On the second line, Imani had written, "By the time you read this, you may already hate me." His fingers tightened around the page. Then he noticed the envelope again. A dark streak crossed the back where old adhesive had been disturbed. Someone had sealed it once. Someone else had opened it. Adrian turned the remaining pages over. One sheet was missing. The torn edge was still trapped inside the fold. He stared at it for several seconds before reaching for the intercom. No one leaves the house. His gaze returned to Imani's first sentence. 5 years ago, she had finally told the Mafia Boss the truth. The only problem was that someone had made sure it reached him 5 years too late. 5 years earlier, Imani Brooks moved through the Moretti penthouse so quietly that Adrian often noticed what she had done before he noticed her. At 6:15 every morning, his espresso appeared beside the financial section, black, no sugar, the porcelain cup warm against his fingers. By 7, the brass handles along the west hallway carried the sharp scent of lemon polish, and the marble floors reflected pale Manhattan light like still water. Imani wore the same charcoal uniform each day, her natural curls pinned into a low bun, her shoes nearly soundless against the stone. She never entered Adrian's study without permission. She never asked about the men arriving after midnight. And unlike half the people surrounding him, she never changed her voice when he walked into a room. One evening, Adrian came home to find her kneeling beside his mother's chair in the library. The fireplace snapped softly behind them, warming the room with cedar smoke while rain tapped against the tall windows. Elena Moretti's medication bottle had rolled beneath a cabinet. Imani flattened herself against the rug, reached underneath, and retrieved it before placing a glass of water into the older woman's hand. Slowly, "Mrs. Moretti, you always say that. Because you always ignore me." Elena laughed. Adrian stopped in the doorway. Men who had known his family for decades rarely teased Moretti. Imani did it without disrespect and without fear. She looked up, saw him, and immediately rose. Your mother missed her afternoon dose. Adrian glanced toward Elena. Because she hid the bottle, Imani added. Traitor, Elena murmured. Adrian almost smiled. Almost. Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Imani gave one small nod and returned to gathering the folded blanket from the sofa. She expected nothing else. That was what began bothering him. Over the following months, Adrian started seeing the traces she left behind. Fresh flowers replacing the expensive arrangements Elena disliked. A repaired button on his winter coat. Soup kept warm when meetings dragged past midnight. Once, after Adrian returned at 2 a.m., he found Imani asleep upright in a kitchen chair because Elena had developed a fever and refused to be left alone. The kitchen smelled of chicken broth and peppermint tea. A fluorescent light buzzed over the stainless steel counter. Imani woke when Adrian set down his keys. She stood immediately. Her temperature came down an hour ago. You were off at 9. She needed someone. For words. No performance. Adrian looked at the untouched dinner beside her and pushed the plate closer. Eat before you go. Her eyes lifted to his. That in order? Would it work better if it were? The smallest smile touched her mouth. Probably not. It was the first time Adrian heard himself laugh in that kitchen. 3 weeks later, Imani stopped smiling. She began pausing whenever Adrian entered, as if a sentence were waiting behind her teeth. Twice he caught her watching him across the dining room before she quickly lowered her eyes. On her final evening, Adrian found her outside his study, holding a sealed envelope. The hallway was cold beneath the air conditioning, and the envelope trembled faintly against her fingertips. You need something? He asked. Imani looked at the envelope, then at him. I need to tell you something. Adrian's phone rang inside the study. He glanced toward it for barely a second. When he looked back, she had lowered the envelope. Tomorrow, she said. It can wait until tomorrow. Adrian opened the study door. Then tomorrow. By sunrise, her room was empty. The blue mug was gone. Her uniform hooks were bare. Adrian stood inside that small room with the clean smell of laundry soap still hanging in the air and listened as his house manager explained that Imani Brooks had left without notice. Adrian said nothing. He simply closed the door and made a decision that would cost them both 5 years. If she chose to leave, he said, his hand still gripping the cold brass knob, no one goes after her. Imani had not planned to disappear that night. She had planned to finally speak. Near midnight, the Moretti penthouse had settled into its guarded silence, broken only by the elevator's distant chime and the muted hiss of tires 40 floors below. Warm sconces washed the west hallway in amber, but Adrian's study door stood partly open, spilling a narrow blade of white light across the dark hardwood. Imani approached with the sealed envelope pressed against her palm. She had rewritten the letter 3 times. The paper was warm from her grip, the blue ink inside carrying everything her voice had failed to say. Adrian deserved to know why she had stayed beside Elena during those long nights, why she had begun watching him differently, and, most importantly, why remaining in that house had become dangerous for someone Adrian would protect without hesitation if he knew the truth. Imani raised her hand toward the study door. Then voices stopped her. If Moretti learns what she knows, he'll act. The words came from inside, low and controlled. Imani froze. Another voice answered, too muffled to identify. And if he acts, Elena becomes leverage. Imani's fingers closed around the envelope. Through the narrow opening, she could see only the edge of Adrian's desk and 2 shadows stretched across the carpet. His mother has no part in this. That won't matter. The air conditioning whispered cold against Imani's neck. Somewhere behind her, the old grandfather clock struck midnight, each note rolling through the corridor like a warning. She stepped backward before the floorboard beneath her shoe could betray her. Elena. That single name changed the weight of every word inside Imani's letter. She had intended to place the truth in Adrian's hands and trust him to decide what came next. But she knew enough about Adrian Moretti to know what he did when someone threatened what belonged to him. He did not retreat. He did not bargain from weakness. He moved first, and everyone around him moved afterward. Imani turned away from the study. 10 minutes later, she entered Elena's bedroom carrying a tray with chamomile tea. The room smelled of lavender lotion and old books, and a small lamp painted gold across Elena's silver hair. You're still awake, Elena said. Imani placed the cup on the nightstand and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. So are you. Elena studied her face. Something happened. Imani reached automatically for the medication organizer, checking tomorrow morning's pills twice, although she already knew they were correct. Mrs. Moretti, if you could go somewhere safe for a little while, would you? Elena's spoon stopped against the porcelain. Safe from what? Imani looked toward the closed door. She could tell Adrian everything tonight. She could watch him reach for his phone, summon men, lock down the building, turn one whispered threat into a war before breakfast. Or she could remove the one thing that might make him act before he understood the cost. Herself. Nothing, Imani said. Forget I asked. She returned to her room and pulled a canvas suitcase from beneath the bed. The zipper rasped through the silence. 2 uniforms. Jeans. 3 shirts. Her mother's photograph. The blue kitchen mug Elena had given her at Christmas. Everything fit because Imani had never owned much. The envelope did not. She stood over it beneath the weak yellow desk lamp, then wrote Adrian's name across the front and carried it downstairs. At the correspondence room, she slid it into the locked outgoing mailbox used for private household letters. Metal clicked beneath her fingers. Once it entered that box, it was supposed to reach Adrian even if she never did. At 4:40 a.m., Imani stepped into the service elevator with her suitcase. Before the doors closed, she looked once toward the silent hallway leading to Adrian's rooms. I'm sorry, she whispered. Then she pressed lobby. By the time Manhattan's first delivery trucks growled along the avenue, Imani Brooks was gone, and the letter containing what she had never been able to tell Adrian was already inside his own house. 5 years later, seated beneath the amber lamp with that same paper in his hands, Adrian finally reached the sentence that explained her silence. If telling you the truth means your mother becomes the price, then I would rather let you believe I abandoned you. Edit by noon on the day Imani disappeared. Adrian was staring at an empty cash drawer while another man explained why she had betrayed him. The penthouse office smelled of black coffee and furniture wax, and hard winter sunlight cut through the blinds in narrow white bars. Adrian stood behind his desk without removing his coat. Across from him, Vincent Hale, the house manager who had controlled the Moretti staff for 11 years, placed a withdrawal receipt beside a printed security log. $20,000 is missing from the emergency household reserve, Vincent said. Paper whispered beneath his fingertips. The service elevator records show Ms. Brooks leaving at 4:42 this morning. Adrian looked at the receipt but did not touch it. She had access? Limited access. Enough. Vincent slid another page forward. She requested her final wages yesterday. Adrian's eyes settled on Imani's signature. It was unmistakable. The same careful handwriting that had labeled Elena's medication bottles and left reminders beside his. Coffee. He remembered Imani outside his study the previous night, holding something against her chest. I need to tell you something. Tomorrow, she had said. It can wait until tomorrow. Now her room was empty, and $20,000 was gone. Find her, Vincent said carefully, and I can have the money recovered before tonight. Adrian lifted his gaze. The room seemed to tighten around the silence. No, Vincent blinked. Sir, I gave an instruction this morning. Adrian picked up the security log and folded it once, precisely. She chose to leave. No one goes after her. Even after this? Adrian dropped the folded paper onto the desk. Especially after this. 3 floors below, Elena refused breakfast when she learned Imani was gone. Her spoon struck the china saucer with a sharp little crack. The dining room carried the smell of toasted bread and fresh lilies, but Imani's usual blue mug was missing from the sideboard, leaving a pale circle in the dust where it had stood for months. She wouldn't steal from you, Elena said. Adrian remained near the window, one hand in his pocket. You don't know that. Neither do you. He turned. Elena pushed her coffee away. Did you ask her? She left before I could. Then you have an absence, Adrian. Not an answer. He said nothing. Elena's chair scraped against the marble as she stood. That girl sat beside my bed when everyone you pay had already gone home. She remembered which pills made me sick. She warmed my slippers on the radiator because my feet were cold. Elena stepped closer and lowered her voice. And you are going to reduce her entire existence in this house to $20,000 because that is easier than admitting she left without trusting you enough to say why. Adrian's jaw shifted once. Enough. Elena held his eyes for another second, then walked away. Her cane tapped across the marble until the sound disappeared. For the next 5 years, Adrian kept his decision. Imani's personnel file was closed. Her name vanished from staff conversations. When Elena asked whether anyone had heard from her, Adrian answered with silence. Yet he never replaced the blue mug. It remained wrapped in newspaper inside a kitchen cabinet after Elena found it tucked behind a box of tea, apparently left behind in Imani's hurried departure. 5 years later, Adrian opened that cabinet himself. The kitchen was dark except for the refrigerator light, cool air spilling across his shirt cuffs as he lifted the chipped blue mug from the shelf. In his other hand was Imani's delayed letter. He carried both upstairs and placed them beside the old accusation, the withdrawal receipt, the security log, the story he had accepted because she had not been there to challenge it. Then Adrian called Vincent Hale. "Come to the penthouse." A pause crackled through the phone. "Tonight." Adrian looked at Imani's sentence again. The ink faded but steady beneath the lamp. "If telling you the truth means your mother becomes the price, then I would rather let you believe I abandoned you. Now." Vincent arrived 27 minutes later. Adrian was waiting beside the mahogany desk, the blue mug on one side and Imani's letter on the other. He did not offer Vincent a chair. He pushed the 5-year-old theft report across the polished wood. "You told me she stole from this house." Vincent's face remained still. "She did." Adrian placed Imani's letter directly over the report. "Then you have one chance to explain why a woman planning to disappear with my money mailed me a confession from inside my own home before she left." For the first time in 11 years, Vincent Hale did not answer immediately. Adrian stepped away from the desk and locked the study door. The brass bolt landed with a hard metallic click. 5 years ago, I chose not to ask questions." His eyes stayed on Vincent. "That choice ends tonight." Edit Vincent Hale did not look at the letter. He looked at the locked door behind Adrian. The study smelled of cedar smoke and cooling espresso, while the brass clock cut the silence into hard, even seconds. Under the amber desk lamp, Imani's faded blue handwriting lay across the theft report like testimony arriving after the verdict. "Sit," Adrian said. Vincent remained standing. Adrian opened the bottom drawer and removed the household ledger from 5 years earlier, not searching for another mystery, but forcing an old accusation to survive scrutiny it had never received. He placed it between them. "You said $20,000 disappeared the morning Imani left. That was the accounting report. I'm not asking what the report said." Adrian pushed the ledger forward. "Show me." Vincent's fingertips rested against the leather cover. For 11 years, he had been the man who organized Adrian's house before Adrian needed to ask. Tonight, his hand stayed still. Adrian waited. The radiator clicked near the window. Far below, a siren dissolved into Manhattan traffic. Finally, Vincent opened the ledger. He turned to the marked date and pointed toward a withdrawal entry. Adrian read it once, then lifted the original receipt from the file. The amount matched. The date matched. Imani's name appeared beneath it, but the signature did not. Adrian placed the receipt beside her letter. One signature leaned sharply to the right, its capital B ending in a narrow loop. The handwriting on the letter was upright, deliberate, the same hand Adrian remembered from 5 years of notes around the penthouse. "You told me that was hers." Vincent swallowed. "I believed it was." Adrian reached across the desk and took Vincent's phone before the older man could react. "Call the bank." "Adrian, call them." 20 minutes later, a private records officer confirmed what Vincent had avoided saying. The emergency reserve had been moved through an internal authorization attached to the Moretti household account. Imani Brooks had never appeared at the bank. Adrian ended the call. He did not raise his voice. That made the room colder. "She didn't take it." Vincent stared at the rug. Adrian picked up the letter. "And this reached the house before she disappeared." No answer. "Who handled private correspondence?" Vincent's mouth tightened. Adrian already knew. The question was no longer about evidence. It was about whether the man across from him would finally say the words. "I did," Vincent whispered. Adrian's thumb stopped against the torn edge where the final sheet should have been. "Did you see this letter?" Vincent closed his eyes for 1 second. "Yes." The confession landed more heavily than a shout. Adrian stepped around the desk. Vincent backed into the leather chair and sat without being told. "She put it in the private box around 4 in the morning," he said. "I removed it before your staff made the morning delivery." Why? Because she had heard enough to make you react, and everyone knew what would happen if Elena became part of that reaction. Adrian's gaze hardened. So you let me believe Amani was a thief. I needed you angry enough not to follow her. Adrian looked toward the blue mug beside the lamp. 5 years compressed into that small chipped piece of ceramic. Elena defending Amani, an empty staff room, his own order that no one searched for her. Vincent reached toward the letter. There was more. Adrian's eyes snapped back to him. Vincent pointed to the torn binding. The last page. I removed it. Adrian's hand closed around the paper. What did she write? Vincent shook his head. I won't repeat it from memory. Not something like that. Adrian walked to the door and unlocked it. Then where is the page? I don't have it anymore. Adrian turned slowly. Vincent finally met his eyes. But I know what she was trying to protect you from, and I know where she went after she left New York. For 5 years, Adrian Moretti had possessed enough power to find almost anyone in America. He had simply chosen not to find Amani Brooks. He picked up her letter, slipped it carefully into his coat, and left the false theft report on the desk. Give me the address. Vincent hesitated. Adrian opened the door. You have until I reach the elevator. This time, Adrian would not let Imani's silence make the decision for him. Adrian found Imani 300 miles from Manhattan, carrying someone else's laundry through the back door of a small assisted living home outside Pittsburgh. The afternoon light was pale against the brick walls, and the air smelled of detergent, boiled coffee, and the wet pavement left by an earlier rain. A dryer thumped behind her as she balanced a plastic basket against one hip, wearing navy scrubs instead of the charcoal uniform he remembered. 5 years had changed small things. Her curls were shorter. Fine lines rested beside her eyes. Her hands looked rougher, the knuckles dry from soap and disinfectant. But when she pushed open the service door and saw Adrian standing beside a black sedan, the basket stopped against her body. Neither moved. Traffic hissed along the road beyond the parking lot. Adrian had come without bodyguards at his side. No convoy. No men in dark suits surrounding the entrance. Only the letter inside his coat. Imani. Her fingers tightened around the basket rim. You shouldn't be here. I read it. The color seemed to leave her face beneath the cold fluorescent light spilling from the doorway. She lowered the basket onto a metal cart, slowly enough that the folded towels did not fall. Yesterday, Imani looked away. A bitter little breath escaped her nose. 5 years. Adrian took the envelope from his coat. The yellowed paper looked almost fragile between his fingers. You sent this before you left. I know when I sent it. I never received it. Her eyes returned to his. For several seconds, only the dryer turned behind her. Then Imani reached out, but Adrian did not hand over the letter. The last page is missing. Her hand stopped in midair. Of course it is. Adrian studied her face. What was on it? Imani pulled her hand back. Something that mattered 5 years ago. She gripped the card and pushed it toward the laundry room. Adrian stepped aside rather than block her. Inside, warm air pressed against his coat. Machines rattled beneath bright ceiling panels, and the sharp smell of bleach caught in his throat. Imani began folding towels. Adrian watched her smooth each one into exact rectangles. Vincent told me where you were. The towel in her hands went still. Then Vincent has finally decided 5 years is long enough. He admitted taking the letter. Imani placed the towel down. Did he admit the rest? Adrian did not answer. That was answer enough. She gave a quiet nod and reached for another towel. You need to leave. Not until you tell me what you sacrificed to keep my mother safe. Imani's hand stopped again. This time, she turned fully toward him. You want a list? Her voice remained low, forcing Adrian to hear every word. I lost my references because your household reported me for theft. I lost the apartment I had lined up because nobody wanted a woman accused of stealing from Adrian Moretti. I spent 8 months cleaning motel rooms under temporary work because respectable employers wouldn't return my calls. Adrian's grip tightened around the envelope until the paper crackled. Imani noticed and carefully took it from him before he damaged it. And Elena? He asked. Imani's thumb moved across his handwritten name on the envelope. Your mother stayed alive. That was the point. You could have contacted me later. And said what? That the people around you had proven they could reach your house, your accounts, your mail? You would have come looking. Yes. Exactly. A call bell chimed down the hallway. Imani removed her gloves and headed toward the door. Adrian followed as far as the threshold. I believed you stole from me. She stopped with her back to him. I know. Those two words struck harder than accusation. For 5 years, he asked. Imani turned. For 5 years, Adrian. I woke up knowing the one person I wanted to understand me probably remembered me as a thief. The hallway seemed suddenly too quiet. She looked down at the old envelope in her hand, then held it against his chest. But I accepted that price before I left your house. Adrian covered the letter with his palm. I didn't. Imani's eyes remained steady. You don't get to change what it cost me because the truth finally reached you. She stepped past him toward the ringing call bell. Adrian remained beneath the fluorescent light, surrounded by the clean smell of linen and disinfectant, while the most powerful thing he possessed, his ability to command an outcome, became useless. For 5 years, Imani had lived with his judgment. Now she was the one walking away, and Adrian was the one left waiting for an answer she was not ready to give. Adrian was still beside the service door when Imani returned 20 minutes later and found him waiting exactly where she had left him. The laundry room behind her breathed warm air into the colder hallway, carrying the clean scent of cotton and bleach, while a vending machine hummed beneath harsh fluorescent light. Imani stopped 6 feet away. Adrian had removed his coat. It lay folded over one arm, and the old envelope remained in his other hand. I thought I told you to leave. You did. You usually have trouble hearing the word no. People usually have trouble saying it to me. Imani gave him a flat look. Then consider this educational. She reached for the service door. Adrian did not block it. Why didn't you tell me? Her hand stayed on the metal bar. The question had none of the authority he used in Manhattan. No command. No threat. Just 6 words spoken quietly enough that the dryer turning behind the wall almost swallowed them. Imani released the door. I tried. She pointed at the envelope. You're holding the proof. I mean before that. Face to face. Imani turned toward him. I stood outside your study that night. I remember. Do you remember what you said? Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. Tomorrow. Exactly. She stepped closer. Tomorrow was easy for you, Adrian. You had guards downstairs, cameras in every elevator, men answering your calls at 2 in the morning. I had one suitcase and a bedroom beside the laundry room. The fluorescent tube overhead flickered once. Adrian's thumb moved over the torn edge of the letter. You thought I couldn't protect you. No, Imani's answer came immediately. I knew you could. That stopped him. She folded her arms, the fabric of her navy scrubs rough beneath her fingers. That was the problem. Back then, you knew how to protect what belonged to you. Your mother, your house, your name, your territory. Adrian's jaw tightened. And you? I belonged to no one. The vending machine compressor clicked off. The sudden quiet made her next word sharper. If I had told you everything in that hallway, you would have protected me your way. You would have locked down the penthouse. You would have ordered people followed. You would have turned my fear into your war. You don't know what I would have done. Imani stared at him. You believed I stole $20,000 and never asked me a single question. Adrian's mouth opened, then closed. That is exactly how well I knew you. She reached for the envelope. This time Adrian released it. Imani held the old paper beneath the white light, tracing her own handwriting with one fingertip. I wrote because paper couldn't interrupt me. Paper couldn't decide what I meant before I finished saying it. And the missing page. Her finger stopped. Adrian took one step closer. Tell me what you wrote. Imani lifted her eyes. No, Imani. You came here because 5 years later a letter forced you to listen. So listen now. She pressed the envelope against his chest. Adrian caught it. I will not reconstruct the part someone stole from me just because Adrian Moretti finally wants an answer. His hand lowered slowly. For years, people had surrendered information when he entered rooms. Imani was making him earn the truth one sentence at a time. Then what do you want from me? He asked. She studied him beneath the unforgiving fluorescent light, not the mafia boss from Manhattan, not the man whose name could empty a restaurant, but the man who had once said tomorrow and allowed 5 years to follow. Nothing. Imani pushed open the service door. Cool evening air swept inside, carrying the smell of wet asphalt. Before stepping through, she looked back. But if you want to know what I never told you, stop asking why I stayed silent. Her eyes dropped to the torn letter in his hand. Ask yourself why someone was so desperate to make sure you never heard me. Adrian returned to Manhattan with Imani's last words following him into every room of the Moretti penthouse. By 9 o'clock the next morning, The long dining table had been cleared of silver and flowers, leaving only dark walnut beneath the chandelier's cold white glow. The room smelled of fresh coffee and old cedar. Vincent Hale stood at one end. Adrian stood at the other. Between them sat Imani's letter, the false withdrawal receipt, and the empty space where its final page belonged. "You asked why I stopped her truth from reaching you," Vincent said. Adrian pulled out a chair, but did not sit. "No, I asked you here to say it where everyone who believed your lie can hear it." Along the wall stood the senior members of the Moretti household, people who had watched Imani serve meals, care for Elena, and then disappear beneath the stain of an accusation no one had questioned. Vincent looked toward them. Adrian slid the forged receipt across the table. "Tell them." Vincent's throat moved. Imani Brooks did not steal $20,000. No one spoke. The refrigerator motor hummed faintly through the adjoining kitchen. A spoon settled against a saucer with a tiny metallic sound. Vincent continued. "I authorized the transfer. I used her departure to make it appear she had taken the money." Adrian's palm flattened against the walnut. "And the letter?" "I intercepted it." A chair creaked near the wall. Adrian did not look away. "Why?" Vincent exhaled slowly. "Because Imani had overheard enough to know Elena had been named as leverage against you. She also knew you would respond the moment you learned it. So she left. She believed removing herself would keep you from learning the threat until Elena could be moved quietly." Adrian's voice dropped. "And you let her believe disappearing was necessary." Vincent nodded. "Then I made sure you wouldn't follow." Adrian stared at the man who had once managed every private detail of his home. "By destroying her name. By making you angry at her instead of curious about her." Silence spread across the table. Adrian reached into his coat and placed the blue mug beside the accusation. Its chipped rim looked almost absurd among polished crystal and tailored suits. 5 years, he said. "She carried this while we carried your lie." Vincent reached inside his jacket. Adrian's security men shifted, but Adrian raised one hand. Vincent withdrew a folded sheet protected inside a clear document sleeve. Blue handwriting showed through the plastic. Adrian did not breathe for a moment. "The missing page," Vincent said. "I kept it because destroying it felt like crossing a line I could never uncross." Adrian took the sleeve. The plastic was cool beneath his fingertips. He recognized Imani's writing immediately. The room disappeared around the first sentence. "Adrian, if I leave before I can say this to your face, please understand that I am not leaving because I stopped caring." His thumb pressed against the edge. He read on. She had written that Elena's safety mattered more than being understood, that she knew Adrian would come after her if he believed she needed saving. Then came the sentence Vincent had stolen 5 years from him to hear. "I need you to let me become someone you can walk away from. Because if you come for me, they will use your mother to make you choose, and I will not be the reason you become the man that choice would require." Adrian lowered the page. The chandelier reflected in the clear sleeve, turning Imani's handwriting silver for an instant. Vincent began to speak. "Adrian, you thought you had the right to decide what truth I could survive." Adrian turned toward the people along the wall. "Every record accusing Imani Brooks is withdrawn today. Every employer who received that accusation gets a correction from my office. Her lost wages are repaid. Her name is cleared in writing." Vincent stared at him. "And me?" Adrian finally looked at him. "You leave this house before noon." No threat followed. None was needed. Vincent removed his keys and placed them on the table. Metal struck wood. The balance of power shifted with that small sound. Adrian picked up Imani's final page and slipped it beside the rest of her letter. 5 years earlier, she had chosen silence to stop him from becoming something worse. Now the truth had finally reached him whole, and Adrian made the one decision she had never believed he could make. He would return to Imani without an order, without protection she had not requested, and without demanding that she forgive him. Adrian returned to Pennsylvania alone, carrying the complete letter in the same envelope Imani had sealed 5 years earlier. He found her after her shift beneath the assisted living home's covered entrance, where warm yellow light spilled across damp concrete and rainwater ticked steadily through a copper gutter. The air smelled of wet leaves and laundry detergent clinging to her navy scrubs. Imani saw him and stopped. This time, Adrian did not approach. He held out the envelope. Vincent kept the last page. Her eyes dropped to it. "You read it?" "Yes." Adrian waited until she chose to cross the distance between them. When she took the envelope, Her thumb brushed the torn edge that had finally been restored. "Your name has been cleared," he said. "Every accusation was withdrawn. Every employer who received that lie is receiving a correction. Vincent is gone." Imani looked up. "You came 300 miles to tell me that." "No." Adrian slipped his hands into his coat pockets, leaving them empty. "I came because 5 years ago you wrote something I should have heard then." Rain whispered beyond the awning. "You asked me to let you become someone I could walk away from." His voice lowered. "And I did." Imani's fingers tightened around the envelope. "Adrian, let me finish this time." She became still. "I believe the easiest version of your disappearance because it protected my pride. You lost your name, your work, your home, and 5 years of your life carrying a decision you made to protect my mother. I lost 5 years because I chose judgment over one question." He looked directly at her. "I cannot give those years back." Imani unfolded the restored final page. Blue ink crossed the old paper beneath the entrance light, the words no longer hidden in a drawer or trapped behind someone else's decision. "And I'm not asking you to come back," Adrian continued. "Not as an employee. Not because I cleared your name. Not because you once protected my family." He stepped backward, giving her the space he had never understood how to give before. "What happens now belongs to you." For several seconds, Imani said nothing. Then she folded the letter carefully. "That is the first thing you've said to me that sounds like you finally understood it." Adrian nodded once. "Then it took me 5 years too long." He left without asking for an answer. 3 months passed. Imani remained in Pennsylvania. The correction letters restored what the accusation had taken on paper, but she rebuilt the rest on her own terms. Adrian called once. She answered. The second time, she called him. Their conversations were short at first, then longer, no promises attached. When Elena's birthday arrived that spring, a town car stopped outside the Moretti building in Manhattan. Imani stepped onto the sidewalk wearing a dark blue coat, the restored letter tucked inside her handbag. The lobby smelled of polished stone and fresh lilies. Adrian was waiting beyond the glass doors. A staff member moved automatically toward the service entrance with Imani's small suitcase. Adrian raised one hand. "No." He walked forward and took the suitcase himself. Then he opened the main door. Imani looked at the entrance, then at him. 5 years earlier, she had left through a service elevator before sunrise, carrying everything she owned because silence had seemed like the only way to protect the people she cared about. Now she crossed the marble lobby beneath warm chandelier light because the choice was finally hers. Elena was waiting upstairs. Adrian did not tell Imani where to stand, how long to stay, or what their future was supposed to become. He simply walked beside her. At the elevator, Imani touched the old envelope inside her bag. "You know," she said. "The letter was supposed to change everything." Adrian pressed the button and looked at her as the doors opened. It did. Imani stepped inside first, and Adrian followed only after she made room for him. 5 years too late. Her words had finally reached the man they were meant for, and by learning to listen instead of command, Adrian gave Imani back the one thing his power could never purchase, the right to choose whether he belonged in her life.